So digging into Dungeon Module X1, the Isle of Dread, from the Expert series, from the it came in the Expert box available on the shelf. Obviously, a lot of the 80s and 90s kids were exposed to this. Right now, we're just starting with the review over the product, just kind of scanning over it, if you will. You had your cover art on the inside jacket. You had your maps. This is Taboo Island, kind of the end point of the adventure, as you will. The modules always are the maps are always keyed to 10-foot square, majority of the times back in the day. Gives you an introduction, kind of talks about how this works in tandem with the expert set to take the world outside. There wasn't really a world in basic. There's always a community around your module, but there wasn't this overarching world yet. There wasn't Greyhawk and the Flanius. There wasn't Forgotten Realms and Sword Coast on Faerun. But when Expert came out, there was. And when you really first got into it, they actually gave you your first world map. This is where everything is, and it's you should be seeing the art right now. It's a little bit it's a black and white print, came with the product, but kind of put everything together and gave your campaign a world to play around with. So the idea was that your party starts somewhere on the mainland. I believe it was Specularum. If you look kind of yeah, at the bottom of the map image you're seeing, I think I can actually click over to that and enlarge it, can't I not? No, I'm doing it in a different way. Hold on. Let's see. Nope, I just pulled the raw image. But point being, there's a city called Specular. DM is told to use this, but has the freedom to do anything else. X1 Isle of Dread comes up with it. I mean, now it's kind of rote, but for its time, it was a pretty. Okay, yeah, you guys are watching me zoom in and out on the same map here. That's cool. So your party was found in Specularum, and the product itself, you were to find your group was to stumble across a handout. I'm getting down ahead of myself, but the module came with this collection of notes from Rory Barbary, a well-known pirate and ne'er-do-well and explorer and adventurer who meets his end about a month before the party shows up. They come across his belongings, hook, crook, however that's left to the DM. They find this note, they find this map, and they kind of put two and two together. And they should be inspired by this point as level fourth or fifth adventurers who have done a dungeon. They save Lost Mines. Okay, for fifth edition examples, you finish Lost Mines of Phandalin. Your group is level 5. They've been trudging through small caves and little dungeons and helping a podunk town for a little while. The freaking Sword Coast has been off to their quest for time eternal. This is a 5th edition. This is an easy to drop in module for 5th edition into the Forgotten Realms from the simple fact that it's a forgotten desert or tropical island. So you might have to move it south towards Chult, for example. If you're playing in Eberron, this fits in a dozen different areas on the Corvair southern area and eastern area of the continental map as well. If you're playing in Greyhawk, same thing near the Amerigo Peninsula. Maybe it's a little bit south of the Lendor Isles. You can use Restonford for your starting point if you wanted to, just tying random stuff together there. But it's if you're not playing in Mystara, if you don't care about learning another continental world, then there's no need to learn it. You can adapt this adventure directly to your particular world. You can bring this into most of the campaign settings with very very little effort. But the start of X1 is really dependent on your group being enterprising. It's really dependent on your group wanting to jump in on the word go and get in there and oh cool, we found an old diary and we've got a map and treasure yar. Okay, so that's the setup. The module itself spends a little bit of time talking about the continental map, the first that's been recently provided to players in Mystara in the BX universe. Lots of tables for random encounters, typical that you're going to find in most of your adventures across the board. A lot of these will work just fine with 5th edition creatures. Literally on a 1-for-1 exchange, a skeleton in 1st edition, a skeleton in Beckme, a skeleton in 2nd edition is really a skeleton in 5th edition. You don't have to do a whole lot of stuff there. There's a lot of more monsters that you're seeing that are kind of a variance here. Where we're at, wolf, tiger, but a lot of them are similar. This was the start. This was the second box set, so there wasn't a ton of craziness added. Now, all of that being said, there was a bestiary that came with this. A lot of it is dinosaur specific, and while we're here, we'll go ahead and kind of take a look at stat blocks. How do I use a stat block? Similar to the AD&D translation, I think the BX/Beckme translation for 5th edition are just as are even easier. You've got to do math in a couple spots, okay? Armor class 6. This still works the same as an advanced. It's a descending armor class. Armor class 10 is the squishiest. Armor class 0 is your ideal. Armor class 0 is equal to armor class 20. So you're starting with the 5th edition base of 20 minus whatever the listed armor class is of the monster stat you're looking at. We're looking at a I don't want to look at a Kopru, that's freaky. The Chief. Armor class 5, okay? Oh, let me pull that over a little bit. You guys aren't necessarily seeing that as well. My bad. Armor class 5. 20 minus 5 is 15. So this guy's going to have an armor class 15 in 5th edition numbers. Fighter 7. That helps you out. That means that his skills are equivalent to a 7th level fighter. So that's going to give you your, excuse me, your proficiency numbers. I make it nice and simple. If it says 7, he's getting a +7 to hit. And he's getting a 3 on his proficiency rolls for things that would matter. Hit points 44, self-explanatory. 7th level fighter, 7 times 10 is 70 divided by. To find the median, you take your hit dice. In this case, he's got 7. 7 times 10 is 70 divided by 2 is 35. So your average is going to be about 38 hit points. This guy's slightly tougher than your average. 1 attack. He should have 2 attacks because he's 7th level. So you might have to adjust that. Damage 1 to 8 plus 2. So it's giving him his +2 for his strength. For here, I would take the 7 divided by 2, his level, to get his proficiency. Add the proficiency to the damage to make them a little meatier. So he has his damage would be 1 to 8 plus 5. So, very quickly, I've looked at this line here. AC 5, 20 minus 5 gives you AC 15. So his armor class is 15. He's a fighter 7. Gives him a +7 to hit, +3 on his proficiencies. Hit points are fine. It's within the average. 1 attack. Give him a 2nd attack. He's the chief. He's a 7th level fighter. 7th level fighter would have 2 attacks in 5e, so bump that up, make him a threat. Damage 1 to 8 plus 2 for his strength, +3 for his proficiency, makes 1 to 8 plus 5. Movement of 120. This, they do you a favor here that they don't do in AD&D. You don't have to do the division. He's just got 40 feet of movement. Morale doesn't really play into 5th edition. I think it's a nice thing to have. Typically, if your party's just beating these guys down, at a certain point, I think the first 25% of the casualties that are taken, the whole enemy team, each person rolls a morale, and then at intervals from there, you have to make a morale check to continue standing on the field. So it's an interesting mechanic that isn't really used anymore. So that's quick and dirty how to translate a BX/Beckme monster stat block into 5th edition. You can take the time, write down the notes if you need to, do the math in your head and make it work. But as long as you know that translation, you can use a BX module as written and run it straight out to your group, provided you make the adjustments that you provided as you know, obviously mapping concerns notwithstanding. So let's get back to the product. This was a pretty cool product at the time. It came with a continental map, came with a gazetteer that gave you brief teases on this. Now, this shoehorned in with the expert book because the expert book also gave the expert rule book also gave you a lot of stuff that worked alongside of the this module to flesh out the world. Kind of nice. It even gave you a nice little pronunciation for everything to settle up arguments. Um, I think even then, this is a different accent than what we use now, just showing you the age. Then it gets to the Isle of Dread. This is the focus of the adventure. First thing is, how do you get your party there? Mid-level, if you want to have if you are using this for 5th edition, you've at this point figured out where you want to put it in your map. You can put it off of a trade isle. For example, your group is sailing down the Sword Coast from Lascaux to Moonshay, or going from Waterdeep to Chult, or whatever, wherever. And, you know, they run into a shipwreck and they heard about we just escaped a mysterious island of XYZ, and shrouded in the mists further to the south, maybe another 150 miles off the main shipping channel. Be careful of the weather. That's why no one ever goes there. Boom. Your island is placed in Forgotten Realms. Or you go on the inner sea, where you have all kinds of up and down. I wouldn't use the inner sea. There's such a good product for that. I'm not going to touch that. Lots of ocean out there to play with. Focus on tropical area, because that's really how the Isle of the Dread is. It's really set up to be this whole island of lost island of dinosaur, the land of the lost, and you know, pleiosauruses and T-Rexes and stuff like that running amok. Villagers hiding out, 1 or 2 little camps here and there. Phanatons, like flying squirrel men type things, flying squirrel humanoid things that live up in the treetops, I guess you could say, like Ewok. With flying squirrel meets Ewok with attitude type things. Araneas are intelligent spiders that have evolved where they can cast a couple spells. Cool stuff like that. You have the central plateau that has the the King Solomon's Temple, the hidden Isle of Dread within the Isle of Dread within the Isle of Lava, that has the temple with the secret treasure of this, that, and the other hidden on it. So the book gives the user, gives the DM a lot of maps, a lot of visual aids to work with to help you out. When the players are playing, they get 2. They get this one on the left, which is kind of the description, the diary entry, and then they get this map on the right, which really kind of details the southern peninsula, the safe place of the island, and then scroll that up a bit so you can see a little better. Yeah, safe place of the island there, and an outline, basically the Barbary. That's funny. Rory Barbary sailed around and kind of mapped out what they could from the coast. Didn't really try to land. Didn't have the people for it. But so you leave with your party should be leaving on an enterprising, let's search it out. When they first land, they'll meet some friendly people if they follow the map. So if they're following the map really well, they will let me go to the DM's version of that map so I can switch between them for quicker. This is the DM's version of that same map that you saw a little bit ago. When you're looking at this, every hex has been cleared out. The concept that you'll hear mentioned sometimes in Dungeons and Dragons and a lot of role-playing games is called the hex crawl. This is the OG publication for D&D of the first hex crawl. Officially, I'm going to say officially because it was 81. Big map filled with hex symbols, empty map, empty of hex symbols. Within the map of the DM that you're looking at, there's certain hexes that are marked with locations that things are going to happen, people take place in. You've got your scale and all of that on that map. The players don't get that opportunity. they actually have to move through their empty hexes, filling the map in as they go to figure out where they're at. Um, Necessary? No. Fun? Absolutely. Um, the party is likely to not get very lost as long as they keep a map and they keep access to it and are paying attention cardinally which directions they go. But to find all the cool stuff in here, yeah, it helps them to use a map and to have a map. They'll eventually keep wandering. So, um, built on a continental map, sending them into the ocean to find the Isle of Dread. The Isle of Dread, the DM's got a big old map that tells you where everything is. There's a little village that the players will land in. I want to call it Taldori. I'm pretty wrong on it. Let's scroll up and find it. Uh, Tanora, Tanaroa. Got big old stone walls that cut off the gap to kind of a whole King Kong Island of Kong-esque type thing. Um, no monkeys on this one. That's for Isle of the Ape. We'll do that another time when we go hunting for the Crook of Rao. Right now, we're still playing in Expert. Ironic how similar those two modules are to each other. It's almost like the AD&D people wanted an Isle of Dread, so they made the Isle of the Ape. But so at this point, and honestly, moving forward, the challenge with this style, there's a lot of content given. You have a good description for the villages. They give you some what ifs. You have several set encounters. As you saw earlier in the publication, you got big old wandering monster tables for wilderness encounters, for night encounters, all of that. Plenty of stuff to fight, plenty of adventure to be found, plenty of treasure. The challenge is always going to be why. How are you going to get your party to go through and go looking for the lair of wretched troglodytes in Hex 1, which are 21. So we're going to look over here. I'm looking at your map over there as well. That's like way up on the northern gap if you're seeing it. If you just follow the spur directly north from 2 to 20. Opposite side, what are the odds of them finding? Well, if they jump off a boat up on the north and think it's a safe cave, it's a pretty good chance they're going to get jumped on by a bunch of trogs. Da 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 da. And this is not limiting a dungeon master in any way, shape, or form to what is in. This is giving you certain points and giving you guidelines. The book itself will encourage you to feel free to populate it, make it your own, and have more fun with it. So the why, a lot of that is up to you. We're looking at a square. This is one of the maps that kind of varies. This is actually a 50-foot scale map. You have several different clans of the villagers living around, guarding the Great Wall. A couple other villages represented by the little dots to the south are considered friendly, neutral, friendly. Gives your party the role play experience of being the explorers. They ran into a couple of people before, as long as they're not butt heads about it. Heck, they can even initiate trade. And the writers of the module gave some support to use that for advancement, to use that for plot hooks as well. So this is a well-written module, despite its age, despite the fact that it's an expert set. 1981 came in the blue box back in the day. Man, this still really holds up over the test of time. It gives you good detail for each of the major locations. It gives the dungeon master a lot of support and advice on how to handle certain situations, how to execute certain encounters. If you're ever, so far, I'm playing so far like I've never looked at this before. I've ran this before, played it before, looked at it, loved it. But taking a dip back into it with a different perspective as a review, number one, you've got to be willing to make conversions. You got to be willing to put the time in, if you're a 5th edition player, to do the math to get a lot of this stuff out. Most of the monsters, 90% of the monsters that you encounter, are easily transferable if you want to switch them out for existing 5th edition. Not a big deal. Tom Moldave, David Cook were the designers of this. Those guys have been around for, I think they're still around making stuff. So, well put together product, excuse me. A full bestiary of additional monsters creatures to add to your collection. Lots of visual aids, lots of maps to help. Um, my one complaint is Taboo Island, the be all end all, the secret ruined city that's hidden in the depths of the Isle of Dread, at the top of a plateau, at the top of a volcano, at the bottom of its crater. A little bit of a letdown, only because I don't think, honestly, you could have made your own product, or you could even import Forgotten City I1, I think it is. Dwellers of Forgotten City, use that here. You're in freaking business, dude. Straight up. Oh, dang. Idea. So, ultimate crossover. Take Isle of Dread. Play with it wherever you're going to play with it. When your people get to the upper Taboo Island, when they get to the central plateau, ignore part 4, sub in Dwellers of the Forbidden City, and then you have all kinds of cool stuff going on in the Forbidden City. You have a lot of good loot. You have lots of good shit there. Excuse my language. Dwellers of the Forbidden City. If you're a 5th edition player and you've played Tomb of Annihilation, you've played Dwellers of Forbidden City broken into 7 or 8 different chunks. Basically, the whole of the section of Cholt is Dwellers of the Forbidden City rewritten for 5th edition. But rather than taking it into 3 or 4 chunks, it leaves that the original module is a big, huge city stuck in the top of a crater that fits perfectly in the top of X1. So, you may be going, oh man, you're supposed to give me 1 review, not 2. And that's fair. If you're familiar with Dwellers of the Forbidden City, dovetails perfectly with X1 Isle of the Dread. If you aren't familiar with it and you want to use this, I would recommend this is where you bust out your mapping program, your graph paper, your imagination, and your creativity, and make something a little bit more for Taboo Island, because they'll climb up this. I'm gonna zoom in a couple clicks here so you understand what I'm saying. The culmination of the exploration is to get to the center of the island, and you at the center of the island is the central plateau, a plateau that extends up into the clouds, as it were, balsic and black basalt cliffs, and it can be climbed. It's big enough. There's lots of handholds, but it's a big deal. The scale is 1 hex per 1 mile. You could cover it in, once you get up there, you could cover it in pretty quickly. Maybe 2 days travel from one side to the other, but lots of verticality. Um, so then there's a little ravine that the players can find and follow up. And this is kind of a nod to the writers and the foresight. If the players are paying attention here, they'll actually find a gold vein. A dwarven character or anyone that's got that background will recognize it and realize that it's a mineable vein. The module gives you the support logistics to say, if people were to mine this vein, it would cost them this much, and to be able to make this much in gold, 15,000 gold, as it were. If you could pull it out, get it back to the shore, refine it, and send it north. But, attention to detail, hats off for something like that. Nowadays, our players think that way. You get the Lost Mines of Phandalin. What can we do with a mine? Can we reopen it? Yeah, what are we going to make? Ah, shit, what's the book say? I think 1d6 per, I don't knows. So it's kind of cool and refreshing to see even some of your older titles do give the dungeon master a, for example, if they want to do this, this is how you do that. So they've come to the central plateau. They've climbed up here. They've made their way, ran into a couple things, come to this middle volcano, which is another spire that goes up. The module describes it as a steep enough climb to when they get to the top of it, it's actually frozen and cold and snowy, and they climb back down into the crater of the volcano where it's tropical again. Okay. Meteorologically, does it work? I don't know. It's fun though. You get your players from sweating, walking around in next to nothing because it's hot, to get into the top and get in hypothermia. Yay. So they climb down, they can find this village on the shore, and they can make their way across. Now, this is, like I was kind of saying, a you see a pirate lair. Yeah, there's a whole pirate camp found along the other shore. There's a lot of stuff to do with this adventure. It's a very well written sandbox adventure. Hard part being making sure your people, making sure your players can find their own fun. So the only thing they give you for Taboo Island, the module describes it as a large collection of ruins and foundations and pillars and this and that and the other. So that's where I would suggest you spend some time throwing some extra stuff out there so that it just so you can add more depth to it, because that's the weak point. There's not a whole heck of a lot going on in that final. Well, I mean, I literally just showed it to you. You've got 2 rooms here, well, not 2 rooms. The be all end all, Taboo Island. You've climbed the mountain. You climbed the plateau. You've climbed the volcano. You got hypothermia. You fell down the volcano. You climbed back up. You found in another group of peoples. You sailed across and you've gotten to a 7, 8, 15 plus what? 4, 19 event 3-story dungeon to end your stuff. Dude, you got 19 events and 19 rooms in the first 2 caves of Caverns of Chaos for B2 Keep on the Borderlands. You've got 20 some odd rooms in the Lost Mines of Phandalin in the Wave Echo Caves. You've got da 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 da. That's the one complaint that I'm gonna have, that I'm gonna actually have to share with this module with X1 is they do the last set dirty. But that just means that's more you can build. You can build a whole underground, a whole ruined civilization with your mapping and programmer with graph paper, and go with the same theme that's presented and add more to it. Um, you may not. You may decide, the flip side of that is your people have been adventuring across the Isle of Dread for however long. They're sick and tired of it. They're ready to go home. They just want to get back to their next adventure, whatever that is. And you know what? I messed that up because I'm too big. Let me go back to where I was. And they just want to close up their deal and head back. That's okay. So, just to close this back up, first and foremost, thank you if you join me, if you're watching, if you're doing any of that. I appreciate your time. I'm just trying to get better about my speech flow, staying on task, staying focused on one thing, and not talking for 40 minutes about something that has nothing to do with my module. So, X1 Isle of Dread presented in the expert set, part of the BECME. Very good module. In my opinion, has exceeded the test of time, provides a lot of information for a new dungeon master. Even if you have to do the translation to 5th edition, it's not that bad. It's not that hard. The numbers are good. The numbers are quick. There's plenty of resources out there. You can go, I mean, hell, I'm going to plug Goodman Games. They've made a hell of a living translating these basics into the monstrous modules that work for 5th edition, for the D20 system, including 5th edition. So if you don't want to do the work, spend the $30, get a nice heavy duty hardback. If you want to do the work, spend the $3 and make it yours. Eventually I'll start putting out products and guides as well to true up the modules with the different systems. There's a lot of gray area in there. I'd rather offer you guys the content, help people discover the whole world of older content out there to play with, than try to resell something that someone else has made. I mean, it is what it is, each to each else. But go to DM's Guild, RPG Drive-Thru, eBay, Amazon, whatever. Get your copy of X1, The Isle of Dread. The aids that are in it, the maps that are in it are very useful. The presentation of the content, giving you a new world to play with. If you want to play with Mystara, this is kind of your first toe dip into it. There's a whole line, I think 17 gazetteers that were put out representing each of these little nations that are shown there. Stuff for another series. You have some sailing, so you're going to have to use 5th edition naval rules. You can have whatever you want as they go from here to the Isle of Dread. It's a pretty good sized island if you look down there on that next map. Several encounters mapped out, keyed out, resources are given. Does not have descriptive boxed text. So DMs, be prepared to read it a couple times, read ahead so you can give the descriptions and know where to stop before you give the spoiler information. That is one of the challenges with your older modules. That was before it was a given. It's an industry standard, probably late 80s, early 90s. It became an industry standard. And it's expected now with most anything. Don't expect it with some of your older conversions. Expect to make sure to read it and paraphrase the stuff. But at the same time, some of us do that ourselves anyway. We make the text our own. Um, Combat encounters are good. Lots of stuff to do without it being overwhelming. I'm a DM that likes to use fights not just to challenge the players, but to tell stories, to impart a sense of dread. It wasn't a big deal with four bandits jumping a group of five guys that can pound them in 2 rounds. But it puts some okay. Are we really gonna have to deal with crazy shit like this? Something like that. Sometimes you want to leave a clue on a body. Sometimes setting the mood, setting the pace. Not every fight has to be a to the death or to the pain. You know, it can be a yeah, we're bad. I just took two of those guys out with 3 shots. Look at me. That's cool. Let your players feel cool. Because that's why we're playing is to have those fun. So most of the encounters are of that nature. Very few of these are of the overwhelming nature to where you're gonna have to hope that. I mean, let's be honest. First encounter in Lost Mines has your party going up against I think 5 goblins. If your party rolls like butt and the goblins roll good and you just let it go, you might have a couple rerolls. You might TPK. Part of that is being a DM, knowing how to manage your rolls, manage your resources. Don't fight your goblins super psycho mean at level 1. Um, this one doesn't put you in that situation because the vast majority of your encounters are manageable unless the party is just psychotic. So, yeah, this is really, man, X1 Isle of Dread. I liked it when I was a kid because it had a cool dinosaur on the front. I liked it as a kid because we learned how to hex crawl. Didn't really use it to its full breadth at that point. We were still satisfied with fighting bigger stuff. What's in the next hex? What's in the next hex? That was enough back then because it was a new addition to the system. Might not be enough now. If you're thinking about using X1 Isle of Dread for a campaign, make sure that you know how to hook your party into it. Because there's not a big payoff. There's not a big bad built into this. You're not going to scale the pinnacle to stop Sauron. It's an adventure. It's a search and exploration. You're looking, the Lost Isle of Dread. What's out here? What's here? And you have some fun fights, some cool stuff that you're doing while you're there. But there's no big payoff. So is that a bad thing? I don't know. It depends on why you're playing, what you do. That may leave you space as a dungeon master to put your own mid-level, middle management in the chain of BBEG in there, and that's cool. That might give you the secret MacGuffin, the horn of Arugel, or whatever dang you want to put at the top of that volcano, at the bottom of that crater, at the end of that city. The plus side of not having anything there is it makes it available for you to do that. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. I recommend this module to anyone that's got a couple bucks to spare and a few minutes to go to whatever source you prefer and pick it up. I'm a supporter of buying it. It's 30 pages, 35 pages. Be prepared to do a little bit of an adaptation to make it work for 5th edition, just a little bit. But the ideas, the themes behind it, the content that it gives you in a sandbox format is really cool. The downside, once again, and then this last time I say it, I'm probably going to finish up. No overarching plot. No big hook that drags the party from the beginning of the module to the end of the module. Party has to be self-motivated to explore, or you as the DM have to be willing to shoehorn part of your plot in as the reason that you're going here. That might be a big deal to some people. Why play a module if there's no reason to go? Yeah, and that's why I'm telling you in context of when it was published, the opportunity to go was enough. In 5th edition terms, might not be enough. A hex crawl just might not be enough to keep a party interested. You might have to put something out there from your story to put it in there. Encounters are well balanced. Content is well presented. Lots of examples for you to work with. Lots of good descriptions for a DM learning how to apply environmental effects, traps, weather, things like that are very well covered. Even though it's in BECME, it's the theories still sound. The numbers translate really easily. It's surprising. Um, One little additive: if you own Dwellers of the Forbidden City, substitute that in for the Taboo Island, and you got a heck of a campaign going on. You got a heck of a campaign. They show up here at level 4. By the time they fight through the Dwellers of the Forbidden City, kill the Aboleth and the Yonti abominations and all that crap up at the top of that, as big as you want to make that thing. Even as written, it's pretty big. Man, you've got a 4th level or 10th level campaign sat on one stinky island if you wanted to. So the interchangeability will be the last thing I'm going to talk about. You can take X1 Isle of Dread and plop it on in any campaign setting with a minimal amount of effort. If you're willing to suspend disbelief, you could have this strange tropical island up on the far north, far off of Icewind Dale, and you're playing Rime of the Frost Maiden. This is where all the freaking clouds and steam and fog's coming from this island. Go over here to put out the volcano, save us from helping. I know that's a silly way to add it in, but is it really? I don't know. That's up to you. Um, I'm a little bit more of a purist, so I would position this island in a southern, well, I can't say southern, that's not, in a tropical climate. Whatever the polarity of your world is, whatever the climate of your chosen setting is, Isle of Dread best fits in a tropical area where you can have dinosaurs and cold-blooded monsters can run around 24/7 eating each other, stuff like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and close up my second module review slash preview of the day. DMGeezerjim here. You can follow me on Facebook, Etsy. I have some maps for sale on there. A couple things popping up once in a while on DM's Guild myself. Would love some support on Patreon. More importantly, if you're watching this on YouTube, appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. I'm going to continue on with this series as well as some mapping tutorials, just some basic chit chats and some other things. As well as we have a couple a live play campaign set in Planescape on the YouTube channel. So like, follow, keep up there. If you're with me on Twitch, daytime is D&D business. Nighttime, I'm usually playing Zomboid or Temple of Elementalia for whatever goobery when I'm on there. So, hey man, follow me on Twitch and hope to see you soon. Wherever I'm catching you, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you being here. Stay safe.